Three, two, one. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Lo-Fi Horror Guy. We are going to have it on, my dude. Today I'm growing on you live. Liam Wilson of the Dillinger Escape Plan, John Frum, Azusa. Dear Heavenly Lord, I cannot wait. Here we go. There we are. There we are. So, in here. Let's see here. Get this connected. Aha!
All right,
Leo!
there we are.
All right. How's it going, man? Thank you very
Going
much.
good. I felt weird about wearing sunglasses, but you're rocking some too, so we'll do it that way.
Here we go.
Future's bright.
Here we go. Here we go. Yeah. First of all, thank you very, very much, man. I so appreciate your time today. This is sick. Thank you, man.
Yeah, man. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're gonna dig in, to some of the projects here. I have one intro question we're gonna start off with, and then the remainder of the interview is about you and your craft, your career in music, and then one finale. We're gonna wrap this bad boy. So you look comfy, you look ready to go. You all set, my dude?
I'm ready. Never had it so good.
Beautiful. Let me ask you, if as far as my wife and I do some traveling, if we're coming through the Philly area, what is a must go as far as a local restaurant, a local eatery that you love, that's a favorite to you?
Oh man. Well, there's so many like kind of cherry picking to do in Philly. I mean, I'll say that I think Philadelphia has one of the best food scenes anywhere in the country. I can say that with confidence, having traveled to most places, and I just know a lot of people agree. I'm not saying that other places don't have a good thing going on, but we've got a lot of really like mom and pop ethnic cuisine that is just unreal. But
nice.
So the pretzels, there's a soft pretzel factory that opens at midnight on most weeknights, and that is like a thing to do. They have like bike rides that start at the Philadelphia Art Museum and ride there at midnight. So that's a thing. There's these tahini shakes at this spot called Goldie. They're just these unbelievable like tahini vegan milkshakes. And
nice.
That's just something where like I've sent people there like, oh dude, you got to go try this. And the response I usually get is like, I went back 4 times to try all the different flavors because they're just so unique and incredible. Those are like my top 2. I mean, I could definitely do a laundry list of places, but that I don't want to distract people. Like, do those 2 and then send me a DM and I'll Sherpa you the rest of the way.
Okay, paint out a little bit more of a map there.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
Starting from there, I can guide you. But yeah, those are the 2. Don't leave Philly without it. Before the Rocky statue, before any of that nonsense. Hit these 2 spots. Go
grab a shake or a pretzel. Yeah, I like that.
And a pretzel. This is not a both and, not either or.
Yeah. Okay, nice. All right. So as far as our episode today, we're going to be digging into you as far as your musical career and different things. But earlier on, let's kind of retrack a little bit with growing up. What were some bands or songs or even an album that really stuck out to you and resonated with kind of starting an interest in music for yourself?
Oh man. Okay. I would say my first favorite band was probably the Talking Heads. That was like the first thing I can remember being like, this is my favorite band, and seeing like, Burning Down the House, and like kind of being raised on those early MTV, times with like Peter Gabriel and Talking Heads, like those videos just being so wild. So, that was an early thing. I remember getting into other things like Creedence Clearwater Revival, and then just kind of the Beatles, and then kind of getting a little older, probably when I hit like 10 or 11, actually being able to like intellectualize bands and music and putting it all together and being like, oh, this is the Beatles, or like, oh, Ozzy Osbourne sang for Black Sabbath, let's put this together. Or like, oh, Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is by Elton John. And like, I think there was one time where I remember finding a stash of my dad's records in my mom's like attic crawl space, and just pulling out like Led Zeppelin 3 and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road and some Black Sabbath stuff, some like Black Oak, Arkansas, and just like random, random stuff. Yeah, I don't know. Steve Miller Band, you know, and a lot of it was just stuff that my
Okay.
mom and my dad listened to. But then there was also this other side that was like B-52s, Pet Shop Boys, Erasure,
Yes.
Dead Can Dance. I mean, Dead Can Dance is another like huge, you know, probably one of my favorite bands still. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Nice.
I was,
Nice.
you know,
Uh,
it was all over the place.
what would you say as far as, from those interests and things, what's maybe an earlier or a first memory of going to a record shop or a music shop and buying something yourself, something that you went and selected yourself?
Okay. Very specifically, I can remember my dad taking me to this record store. I want to say, I don't remember exactly where it was. It may have been in like Ardmore, PA, if anybody local is listening, but it was called Plastic Fantastic. And
Oh, okay.
my dad was shopping for some stuff. I remember him pulling out, oh man, like Leonard Skinnard and showing me like the album that came out that was in a brown bag because it was like after the plane crash, you know, and like,
Yeah.
but for me, I remember that day buying Ozzy Osbourne, The Ultimate Sin. And, you know, the
Oh,
album cover
nice.
just being like, what is this? Like crazy, scary, um, you know, and definitely Ozzy, you know, Bark at the Moon, you know, those kind of, all of that kind of stuff was like, definitely like I was into it, but I was definitely like which album I chose was all about that.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
even like
Nice.
Iron Maiden, you know, I remember like Somewhere in Time was like another big one for me. You know, and kind of just when you're sifting through, you just see so many albums. You're like, I don't even know where to start here.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, you know, and that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I think those were, you know, two Iron Maiden and Ozzy Osbourne were definitely two things that I remember at least picking which album based on the cover alone, just being like, this is crazy, you know, and
Nice,
yeah,
nice. That's yeah, that kind of goes to my next question too. And it was funny you mentioned that as far as picking albums off of cover art, because that was one of those things, before streaming and having even listening stations at
sure,
music shops. You kind of went into something and it's like, I have no idea what this is, but this cover art is fucking crazy, and
yeah. Like I know I like
try to
some
pick it up.
Ozzy, but yeah.
Yeah, right, right, right. Does anything come to mind as far as, something that maybe you weren't familiar with that the cover art just pulled you into?
Um, I mean, it's so hard to say because there were definitely, I kind of, when I'm trying to think about this, and even, you know, you kind of shot me some of these preliminary things to think about, and I was like, I can definitely think of covers. I can't necessarily think of anything that I like outright purchased.
Okay.
Um, you know, but I think of things that I was like attracted to. Like I remember going to this place called the Bazaar in Upper Darby. Again, if anybody's local, like I think there was even a documentary made about this place. But I remember seeing like the death covers, you know, like leprosy or spiritual
Oh
healing,
yeah.
or seeing death like carved into a picnic table at like the park I used to hang out at. And you know, but be way before I ever heard death, you know, and then kind of it wasn't until I was like probably 13 or 14 that I finally came back around to that, and like was it was kind of like the second opinion, you know, or like the
Yeah.
sandwich was just served to me in a different way, and I was like, oh, okay. um
Yeah.
but like, you know, or just like being at my friends' houses and their older brothers playing music, or their older, you know, I remember
Okay.
this one family and these three triplet sisters that were like way into like Slayer and Megadeth and Dokken, and you know, this other family introducing me to Merciful Fate, Don't Break the Oath, and kind of
Oh,
coming
nice.
around to like, you know, hearing them and getting like dubs of those things on like a Maxell cassette, you know, them just kind of like, while I would have a sleepover, their sisters or their brothers would be like dubbing me stuff. But I didn't connect it with the album art. And it wasn't until later that I came back around to like going to a store and looking up like, oh, what's the South of Heaven cover look like? Or what's Rain and Blood look like?
Oh,
Or what does, you know, again, Don't Break the Oath, what does that cover look like? And just being like,
nice. Okay.
whoa, okay, you know. And
Yeah.
also kind of feeling like, you know, at a young age, like I'd probably be better off if I didn't buy this because I don't know how I'm going to hide this from my mom, or like, so it's better that it's just on like some Maxell cassette that I could just kind of like, maybe draw the logo on.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, other things that come to mind are like Def Leppard, the
Okay.
Hysteria cover or something, just being like, I don't even or Pyromania, like, I don't even understand what this is, but it just looks cool. And I know this one song.
Yeah. Right.
So
Right.
yeah, I
Okay.
don't know.
I
Um,
love that, and so as far as like with your interest in music kind of transferring into playing, how did you come about your first instrument? May it be a guitar or a bass? How did you come
uh,
about getting
well,
getting into playing?
I started on bass. The short version of this story that I've told, many times, many different places, is basically I went on like an Outward Bound type experience, which is kind of like a I don't know, like an outdoor camp for kids.
Mm,
And I was on this kind of like backpacking trip up and down on parts of the Appalachian Trail.
okay.
And one of the instructor guides, I'm maybe like 10 or 11. One of the instructors was maybe like, maybe between 18 and 20, I'm going to say. And I was kind of one of the older, or at least more like adult friendly, or I wanted to hang out with the older guides more than like the kids.
Yeah.
And we would talk on the trail, and I was into like Red Hot Chili Peppers and Primus and Living Color, and just stuff like that, Metallica, Faith No More, whatever. I was into all this
Yeah.
stuff, and at a pretty early age. So anyway, I was talking about music with this guy, and at the time I kind of wanted to be a drummer, or at least that's what I thought. And he was like, yeah, man, all those bands have really cool drummers, and like, but I'm a bass player, and maybe what you're hearing is the bass, because those are some of my all of those are some of my favorite bands too. And, all of those bands have really pretty phenomenal bass players as well. So I remember going home and kind of like idolizing this dude and like his, everything about him. Maybe I just kind of needed like some male role model or something, but I like cut my hair like him and was just like, I'm going to, kind of try to embody this guy. And
Okay.
Jason, wherever you are, inner quest. So anyway, uh and I came home and I kind of was just kind of politely ringing the dinner bell with my mom, like, hey, I want to get a bass, and like uh ordering like a Ken Smith bass catalog, because it was the only advertisement I saw in a Guitar Player magazine, and
Oh,
getting the
okay.
catalog and just being like, oh man, like these basses are like $4,000. Like I can't afford this. I'm never gonna play bass. Thinking that all instruments are like that much, and not realizing this is like top of the line boutique stuff.
Right.
So kind of feeling discouraged, and then finding a cousin who was like, oh, there's this rental place. So I went there and I rented a bass. But it took almost a year of me being like, this isn't a phase. This is what I want to do.
Mm,
And by that time, I was getting into like Suicidal Tendencies and Infectious Grooves and Rob Trujillo, and um,
nice.
and then getting a bass and kind of jumping into lessons, and then trying to learn things. Like I think the first song I played or tried to learn was "Crash Course in Brain Surgery" from the Metallica Garage Days EP,
Nice.
and just
Okay.
kind of and it's funny because like I came to that bass lesson with a pick, and then was kind of talked out of it. And then like years later, that kind of came back to haunt me in so many other ways. Just like I really, I'm grateful that I learned how to play with my fingers, and that I still like will often turn to my fingers as like a first default when I'm just like learning something or writing something. But um, when I joined Dillinger, it was kind of like a prerequisite that I learned with a pick.
Mm,
And that was
okay.
like a bit of a steep on ramp, where it was like I got to learn this crazy music, and I got to learn how to play with a pick. So I'm just like,
Yeah.
um, so yeah, and I mean a lot of those pick players like Jason Newsted and like Mike Inez and Billy Gould, and I mean I could probably, again, I don't even want to start, because I'm just gonna leave out so many names that I don't want to
Sure.
overlook.
Sure. That's, yeah.
Um,
Okay.
But yeah,
It's so you mentioned in those early days too, as far as before some of the bands that you're known for now. Let's kind of take it back to some of maybe even your earlier bands or your first bands.
okay,
So
yeah.
some different memories that pop up as far as writing your first songs. What are some things that come to mind with that?
Okay, well, the first band that I would consider being like a significant thing that anybody would have ever come across is this band. It was called For Life. It was in like Upper Darby, Delco area in like
Okay.
Philadelphia. So, and not unlike almost every other band I feel like I joined, except for a few, except for maybe Azusa and John Frum. I like joined a band that was already going. I was already kind of just like joining to fill some shoes. So my first steps were like learning somebody else's songs, and learning,
Okay.
kind of how to play these songs my way, but doing them like a service. And, so, that was always kind of like the first step, which I think is a good step because then it kind of helped me like get into the vocabulary of the bands I'm joining and also kind of like humble me in a way to being like, I'm joining, a band. This isn't my band. This is me kind of joining to hopefully block for touchdowns or whatever you want to say. And then once we
Okay.
started getting into
Okay.
the songwriting stuff, I just, one of the things I got to be honest and admit was just kind of feeling like a little confused and just like, how do you,
Okay.
somebody's asking real quick here, do I listen to Car Bomb? I listen to Car Bomb and I know those guys pretty well because my band For Life played with Neck. Like that was some of our first shows. So Greg and
Oh,
Mike are
okay.
like old, tight bros. So anyway,
Nice.
I was saying like I just kind of remember being like a little confused, kind of like, well, I got the bass and I got the gear and I got like the somewhat cool t-shirt that I can wear on stage and we got some shows, but like, and I know where to put my hands and everything, but like in terms of like writing, it was like um and I feel like it's just kind of maybe even just like a combination of humility and beginner mind of just like, I just want to like do the song a good service and also kind of insert myself into this. But, I'm always just kind of like skeptical of my own conclusions here.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Sure.
so, and in the studio, I think it was like a lot of the same way where it was just kind of like, I think I know what I'm doing. And I maybe, thinking back, it was like, I'm not sure anybody knew what we were doing. Um, or like maybe, I can definitely say the one guitar player, Dan, like he seemed to know what he was doing. He seemed to have everything. And in different ways, like, my band members knew how to like promote us or get shows or whatever. And I was just kind of like, I don't know, but like, but it was definitely like a jump into the deep end kind of thing where like through osmosis, I figured it out pretty quickly so that when I did start to join like, the next bigger band and the next bigger band, um,
Hmm.
I just kind of, felt like I was at least like aware of the system, or like the
Yeah.
process here, the strategy of like, you promote your own show, book your own venue, find a headliner, and then put your band on as the opener and kind of build it that way and try to just like trade shows and I don't know, like that. I don't even know if it works that way anymore. I assume it kind of does, but who knows moving forward how
Yeah.
things are, how things are going to go.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
want to. I don't want it to be
I,
like, okay, boomer, like that's how it worked then. But I don't.
yeah, yeah. No,
Um,
I mean, I don't think that spirit has left, and I think it is a valued thing that you mentioned too. As far as like myself, like the band that I'm in right now, they had already had a full album out. They had an EP, and it's kind of funny hearing somebody, as yourself, as far as speaking on those terms, because it's one of those things coming in for the first time and wanting to write or wanting to, play or be in the studio. You're like, all right, I want to make sure that I'm not doing this an injustice, but at the same time,
right.
like I want to kind of, have my own boundaries of like feeling that it's something that I'm putting at it, and not just
Yeah.
reproducing somebody else's work.
And kind of coming in as like a filling in the shoes member. There's also this like this pecking order thing that you got to figure out,
Yeah.
and I
Okay.
know the other members probably had that, too, but like it was kind of them, maybe not versus me, but it was like me, and then I'm kind of entering their world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I very much felt like
Yeah.
that's been a theme my whole life, in a sense, where I'm like, okay, how do I just be adaptable? And how do I, take on that like more esoteric bass player role of like really just trying to marry everything in a nice, seamless way,
Sure.
and try to be
Okay.
as like
Do you think that
sincere
that's
about it
something?
as possible.
Do you think that that's something that pushes you to, maybe in a sense of having, something where it's going to be at this level, but pushing yourself into those situations that kind of makes you make sure that you're going a little bit above and beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a bug and a feature. It
Yeah.
definitely kind of gives me
Okay.
something to like reach for, but I feel like, I might get up in my head a little bit too much, or like, as my mom would say, like when you're thinking, you're stinking. And I definitely feel like I spend a lot of time like maybe thinking too much and being over analytical, and that might just be my, my disposition and my, temperament in life. I mean,
Okay.
everything I got and however I approached it, I very much think was like, it's my karma. It's that's just my dharma. This is what I'm here to work out. And that like playing bass and even choosing bass, or choosing music is like my thing, was just kind of, we all have to cut through Maya. We all have to cut through the illusion of life in some capacity. And, I just kind of chose to do it through music and with a
Hmm.
bass. And, but ultimately I'm just trying to kind of boil it all away into like what it's all really about, like what the bigger questions are, like why am I here? And what is this here to teach me? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, yeah, my mom is
Raises a
watching.
lot of
That's my mom's
questions there
golf
for sure.
mantra. If I'm thinking, I'm
Oh, okay.
stinking. Thanks, Mom. Um,
I love that. That's good. Let's dig in a little bit as far as early traveling or touring. What was something that maybe happened on that first trip that kind of served as like a on the job training for future endeavors?
oh man. Um, I mean, so many things. I think even just, uh, I mean, I think, especially those first tours as they're going, I think the first Dillinger tour was maybe like 6 weeks in Europe. Actually, the first Dillinger tour with me was like a week down the coast with the Misfits and some other bands. So that was kind of like,
Mm,
again, like learning that pecking order thing.
right.
Um, and trying to really like work out, just some of my relationships with everybody in the band, and just kind of making
Mm.
sure that I was bringing it. It was constantly like, do I focus on playing the song well, or do I focus on performing? Because Dillinger obviously had that kind of prerequisite in both, arenas. And, it was very much, again, like both. That was the answer to everything, like both. I was like, okay. Um, so, but I guess with Europe, it was also like, again, just kind of being thrown into the deep end of, you're far from home. Wherever you go, there you are. If you didn't pack right, you're kind of screwed. There is a bit of like, it's not like a third world country, um,
Mhm.
but it was like pre-Euro. All the borders were still very much like, this is Germany, this is France, and everything was definitely like on this currency and this currency. And um, so I think really it was just kind of like an open-mindedness, and also like, um, which has kind of been a theme ever since, is just kind of realizing that like, not only am I not the center of the universe, but like my band is not the center of the universe. America is certainly not the center of the universe, and not everybody wants to be America, and not all the stories that I've been taught are true. Like,
Yeah.
the world would not be speaking German if it weren't for the Americans. It might be the Russians that actually had a lot more to do with that kind of thing. And like,
Mm.
something else that I remember hearing that really kind of blew my mind was like, going to Japan and asking like, well, how do you feel about like, what we did during World War II and Hiroshima and Nagasaki? And then somebody's perspective was like, oh, we kind of feel like we deserved it for what we did to the Chinese. And I was like, what you did to the Chinese? I don't even know what you're talking
Whoa.
about. I'm too young to
Right.
even be able to, like, maybe not too young, but just like, I've just been too indoctrinated in very much like the American narrative.
Hmm.
Um, so I think that,
Wow.
is kind of like my bigger takeaway. I mean, I could noodle about like, oh, bring a, bring a power converter or bring an extra cable or like bring a bunch of snacks,
Mm-hmm.
or something, especially as a
Well, I
vegan.
love that you bring up something outside of music though too. That's kind of the fun with that question, and mention things like that. Like that, I mean, that's powerful shit.
I mean, yeah, I can definitely think of like almost every night on the System of a Down tour, like those dudes being like pretty political, and they're at it, and just kind of learning about the genocide or in Turkey and like the Armenian stuff. Just learning about that kind of stuff, and that there is a different perspective, and that like I don't know. I think that and throughout all the political stuff that America has been through, whether it was like the Iraq, or the Bush years, the Trump years, all of this kind of, and the Obama years, and just the different perspectives that people have around the world, and how like how much the rest of the world knows about our politics, and how little we actually know about their politics.
Yeah,
And
right.
how I wish when I was in high school I had actually paid more attention in like my French class, and not into all the other stuff, because like had I known I would have been touring the world, I would have taken mostly um, language classes. Somebody's asking, did I meet
Yeah.
Serge? Yeah, we were on tour for a month, like it would have been hard not to meet him, did I have like dinner with him every night? No, but did we meet? For sure, for sure. And
That'd have been
yes,
interesting if you said no.
I mean, I could definitely go into
I didn't.
tours. I could definitely talk about tours where like I was on tour with people for a month, and I was even like in elevators with certain people, and I would say hi, and they would just like very shyly just kind of be like, and I'm like, okay, dude, I
Oh,
don't even know what that's about.
yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, okay.
Some people are cooler than others.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So let me kind of continuing on. You mentioned as far as traveling with Dillinger and some of those trips there and tours. My introduction to your work was through Dillinger when this machine came out, and it had to have been within that same week. I went and I was just trying to scour anything that I could get after that moment. And Irony is a Dead Scene comes to me. What can you tell us about, as far as that may have served as first times in writing or in the studio with working with the band on that, and then working with Mike Patton?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway was like, going to the studio and just being like, oh, Mike Patton is here, and just kind of as like a big Faith No More fan, I'm like, I think I'm like 20, maybe. I don't even remember. I was definitely what I think is like being really young to be in that situation, and just kind of immature. Um, and kind of being like, oh, hey, Mr. Patton. And he's like, oh, call me Mike. And, just being like real, cool. And he had stories for sure. And like, we were all about hearing all the stories he wanted to tell. But like, the biggest thing was just kind of like, he's just a dude. And like, and he's a cool dude. And yeah, there might be people out there who are like, that dude's a dick. Or I met that guy, he was a dick. And it's like, well, I don't know the context, but maybe you approached him in a way that's like, why wouldn't he be? Or like
Right.
of all the questions you could, it's like, of all the questions you can ask him, what did you ask him? And,
Mm-hmm.
or like, how did you approach him? And whatever it is. Um,
Right.
so a lot of my takeaway from that was just like, be cool, no matter what, no matter how big you get, don't forget, that like in certain moments you're forced to wear the Superman suit. But like as quickly as you can put that Clark Kent suit back on, just do it. And try to be in that mindset at all times. And try to just like relate to people as people. And when you have to be Superman, be Superman. But like don't get wrapped up in
Oh.
Superman. Spend more time trying to be like as Clark Kent as you can possibly be. And so just kind of
Yeah.
interacting with him and seeing the way that he, the other thing was just kind of like seeing his work ethic. We'd be like falling
Okay.
asleep at the mixing board, just kind of like more coffee. And he'd be like, we're going to do another track. I'm going to layer it this way. Just like, and of course, when you're in the driver's seat or when you're in the hot seat, like you kind of do have that energy. I think, I find that like when I'm tracking, it's like, I'm just like a perpetual motion machine. And like
Mm-hmm.
producers might be fading, but I'm just like, no, keep going. I want to do it better. This is my last chance. I only get one
Right.
take, but I don't really, because punch-ins, you don't really. Um, but like, just seeing his like pure fire for it, and just like
Okay.
just so hungry and like just that like I smell blood in the water sharkness.
I love that.
Yeah, like that was just really cool to see and kind of like set my bar as like, okay, like I gotta kind of wake up with that energy. I struggle to like wake up and figure out like, what am I gonna make my daughter for lunch today or something might be like one of my first hurdles. And like dudes like Elon Musk are waking up like, how am I going to get somebody on Mars today? Like some people are just built differently. And I
Right.
am like trying to get more of that and maintain some more of that energy. Um,
That's funny. Oh
so
my God.
yeah, yeah.
And so true. Yeah. I love that. As far as one last thing I wanted to
Yeah,
ask,
sure.
as far as with Dillinger here, and then we're going to kind of move on. Through all the years and all the traveling that you did, if you could have had a set list where you could have chose 3 songs that you guys didn't really play or never played live, what would
Okay.
you have included in this set?
Uh, well, I don't think we ever played, I might not should get the name right. The Threat of Nuclear Weapons, I think is
Oh,
what it
okay.
is.
Yeah.
I think it was like the last track on Option Paralysis.
Yeah.
Um, that thing was just a beast, and it wasn't like we were actively like, no, we can't play it. It was just like one of these things where whenever we would make the set lists and try to think about like what people wanted to hear, and yeah, I mean that was one. I don't know if we ever played Honeysuckle, which is the off of
Oh, yeah.
Dissociation.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, our dude Manwolf here is asking for Lurch, but we did play Lurch a lot.
Yeah.
Um, So I don't know. I mean, I guess I could throw that one in there. Another one that we kind of stopped playing and only played, we played it in Australia in Sydney because a friend of mine and a friend of the band's like an old fan of the band who I know has, tirelessly promoted us down there,
Mm.
is this dude, Paul Murphy. And he kept asking us for years, like, dude, just play Sandbox Magician. Please play Sandbox
Oh,
Magician.
man.
And we played it in Sydney, and it was like a fart in church. It was just like, and I guess I realized that like so many people like just don't even know the song. It's just like so many of our fans have kind of joined at Calculating or joined at Irony or joined at Miss Machine, or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever. And like the Running Board EP is probably just so low on the totem pole. Maybe Cleopatra's Sling or something else from the original thing.
Yeah.
Other people are saying Highway Robbery. Like we didn't play that a lot either. And that was just something where like, and I think this is also true for Unretrified. Like, whenever we would rehearse it or sound check it, it's like no matter how well we played it, it just always felt like, I don't know, man. I want this to work,
Hmm.
but it just seems a little flat. I don't know. There was some kind of studio magic or some kind of like, we caught lightning in a bottle when we tracked it, and it
Oh,
just
okay.
doesn't. It honestly just didn't translate. And we played it at
Hmm.
the final shows. We would kind of try to work it in for different things. Like I remember when we did the AFI tour, we were like, well, maybe we should work in a song like that because it might be a little bit more palatable. And although there's a certain part of us that just wants to like ram it down their throats with their fans, it's also kind of like, well, why are we here if we're not going to try to, win some hearts and minds? And like we did
Sure.
write this song and it is one of our songs. It's not like a cover that we're trying to
Hmm.
like play to appease people.
Right.
Um, and every time we tried to play it, it was just kind of like, I didn't feel it, or it just kind of like was such a wet blanket on the vibe of our live performance that it was just kind of like we could never recover from it. And it was kind of like, how do we bring
Huh.
that energy
Weird.
back after we like brought it down so low? Again, people
Wow.
are asking for like Horse Hunter. It's like we play that a lot.
Yeah.
We just didn't continue to play it. It was just something where it was like,
A set list here
we'd
and
hit
there.
it hard when we were in that album cycle. Or like
Oh, okay.
maybe like if Brent from Mastodon was around or on the festival and he was in the mood to do it and we could all remember the lyrics fast enough. You know what I mean? There's so many reasons. Or you're just like, I feel like we have better songs, or like we could try to play it, but we didn't really rehearse it and there's a chance that it's going to just fall flat on our face. And not that I'm so, you know, egocentric that I'm not willing to fall flat on our face, because we occasionally did. But, you know, we were kind of just like trying to just like deliver a very consistent thing.
Yeah.
You know, and when we just kind of, because we would start a tour with like a couple different set lists, or like, okay, well, let's try to work this one in tonight. Or maybe if we put it here. And like sometimes no matter where we would place stuff, we were just like, just no. It doesn't work. And, you know, something about our shows, it might even be something as, you know, for this leg of the tour, I just don't even want to look at the set list. I just want to know what the next song is and be ready. Because if I have to stop and drink some water and tune and look at the set, it's already bringing that, like, you know, that it was fucking with the flow.
Yeah. Okay.
And, you know, and that was just so important for us. Like once you flick that switch, it was just like, bang, you know, you don't have time. If you take your guard down from 1 second, it's, you know, we're going to lose it.
Yeah. And even with a band like Dillinger, as far as the energy that you can, you know, pursue and the energy that you can put out to the audience, I think it's an interesting thing as far as, you know, there's a method to the madness with, you know, how you're arranging a set and how you're kind of weaving through, you know, and letting certain moments kind of dull down a little bit, but not too much.
Sure.
And
Yeah. I mean,
like
there was definitely always like an ebb and a flow and a consciousness of like, okay, this song ends a little like this. Let's kind of go into this, or like, you know, you're always kind of playing, you know, puppet master a little bit with the vibe and the energy, knowing that you've got to work through certain things, and knowing that, like, you know, not that you need a breather, but like, if we put this song here, it's a little bit of a breather, you know, and you know, man, what's the song? I can't even think of it. It's so bad. It's on Option Paralysis. It's kind of like it's like probably the #1 song on Spotify, and I don't know why I can't think of it. It's kind of like an upbeat rockin' tune.
yeah, I'm trying to
Boom.
think now. Okay.
Oh my God, I can't. I'm like,
I'm
feels
gonna
like
be
I'm not.
embarrassed
I
now that
and here I am, just so in Clark Kent mode, and so like I just took that disc out, and you know that hard drive is like in a closet somewhere or in cold storage.
Is it Mona Lisa song or
No,
yeah?
no, no, no. It's Milk Lizard. Thank you.
Oh
Thank you.
yeah,
Thank
yeah.
you.
Okay,
Thank
okay,
you
got
all.
you. Nice.
Um, but like, you know, how that song was like kind of a slower pace, but like
Hmm.
very much like took a lot of energy, took a lot of focus, because it was just so constant. You know, at least for me, I felt like that song was just like, I'm constantly going. So, you know, for somebody that might be a breather, but for me, that was not a breather. So kind of finding like where you know, Greg is screaming his head off on this song, but there might be less vocals on this, or like, you know, Crossburner might be a little easier for somebody, but not for this person.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
you know, so just kind of being respectful of like how to keep the general energy level up, or just kind of
Yeah.
like, you know, the song energy level is really high, but our performance energy is low because I have to concentrate so much. You know, a
Okay.
song like Understanding Decay, like that was another song that, like, for me, if I had to pick, like, you know, Honeysuckle, you know, Nuclear Weapons, and even though we played it a couple times, Understanding Decay was like a song that I loved it. I still love it. I think it's just so like wacky,
Mhm.
and like so subtly weird. And I remember tracking it in the studio, and just like, I mean, very little makes Steve Evans, you know, his eyebrows don't really get raised at much. And he was just like, what? Like this intro, this kind of rubber bandy, you know, time bending elasticity is just like weird, you know? So playing that live was always like super exciting for me too.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
again, anyway, now I don't want to detour too much.
I
Let's move. Let's keep
I
going.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And that we are going to move on here as far as I want to talk some John Frum. The track
Okay.
"Wasting Subtle Body" that you guys had a video for. What
Yeah.
can you tell us a little bit about, you know, maybe the writing or the recording process with this track in
Yeah.
general, and then the
Um,
video?
Yeah, I mean, the video was, you know, we used Mitch Massey again, who Dillinger used.
Hmm.
Um, you know, and he and I have stayed in touch. We're actually kind of, um, you know, trying to build something right now.
Oh,
where
sweet.
we're kind of like, we're talking like once a week on a project that we just kind of a passion project. Just like, dude, let's collaborate on something. I don't care if it's all out of pocket. Like we both, excuse me, there's a book that we both love. And I was just kind of had a weird shower inspiration where I was like, I feel like we need to make a video out of a short story in this book or something, you know? So, and he's the only person I can think of who would ever even like chomp at this bit with me. So
Nice. Okay.
anyway, he was the obvious, like, you know, let's do it. Um, and I just kind of remember putting together a box of like random things, like a bird's nest and like different like rocks and shells and crystals and just like weird stuff, and was just kind of like you know, just kind of do you. Yeah, cattle decapitation director, yes.
Yeah.
So anyway, just sending him this box of things and just being like, dude, just like you know, I would have to go back into some of our emails and refresh myself on some of the dialogue, but just you know, just kind of get weird. And you know, I was really into the idea, you know, with the John Frum aesthetics of like spiritual armor, you know, and kind of making it so
Oh,
that like,
okay.
you know, Dillinger, not to say we didn't have a look in it or whatever, but it was kind of, especially in the early years, it was very much just like five dudes going on stage in their clothes, you know, and just like I walk off the street, I get up here and I literally do this crazy thing, and then I kind of go back to just being like, dude. And I kind of like that like short hair normal dude thing compared to like what our shows ended up being. But with John Frum, you know, growing up on like, you know, King Diamond and, you know, amongst other, you know, tons of other bands that were kind of more into like, I don't want to say theatrics, but like the Locust, you know, again, this kind of like this uniform, this kind of thing that like when you put it on, you embody something else, you know, and it's kind of,
Oh,
maybe it's a
yeah,
little
yeah.
fake until you make it, but just like, you know, or placebo effect. But like when you go to the doctor, if it's just some dude in street clothes, you're not going to take him as seriously as the dude wearing like the white, you know, the white gown. So,
Yeah.
um, anyway, like, you know, so the spiritual armor thing, the kind of like, you know, some kind of, I don't even know. I don't remember exactly what was going into the video, but it was basically just like, go get weird, go to the woods, go get weird. And,
Sure. Okay.
you know, with the song, I remember, you know, we were writing that whole record in my basement, basically. And we would get together on like Monday afternoons at noon. I remember it just kind of being like a thing. It kind of fit in everybody's schedule. We'd go to the basement. We'd burn it out for like 2 hours, you know, and I knew the drummer Eli, but I really had never met Matt, the guitar player. We were kind of searching for a singer for a lot of that time, using some like different local people, some other people like around. And then, you know, finally through some, you know, the Association of Good Peers, finding Derek in LA. But when it came to that song specifically, it was kind of like one of the last things we wrote. We had written all these kind of like really long, you know, really fluid, weird, you know, progressive, death metal-y, fusion-y tracks that just kind of, we let them be themselves. You know, it was kind of like, well, this
Mm.
song just kind of feels like it wants to be 8 minutes long. It's just kind of how it's shaping up. You know, it was very much like, you know, kind of getting back into like the songwriting question. This was like really a great experience for me to be like, this is kind of my band in the sense of like, we all joined forces at the same time. This is very democratic. We're all writing equally in the basement. We're jamming it out. This isn't written on a computer and passed around. This isn't like, I wrote this riff with this beat and everything, now learn it. It was very much like this, a lot of dialogue, a lot of like, well, why don't you do something like a did, you know, a lot of like conducting of other people, you know, Eli being like, I wrote this riff, so Liam, you do this, try this. Everybody just kind of being super open to whatever points of view and ideas everybody had. It was like really exciting and
Yeah.
fun.
Okay.
It took a long time because again, we only had like 2 hours once a week, but we were always just like burning. But
Nice.
when it came to that song, like, you know, because like I said, it took like 6 years to get this going. By this time, you know, I had a baby in the house. It was kind of nap time. And I remember like if you guys come over, we can definitely like work on some stuff. Maybe we can do some edits. Like, let's just all stay in the room. We might not be able to practice at full volume, but like I'll put my daughter to sleep. I'll keep the baby monitor in the basement. We'll do the thing. And it was just like impossible to get it done. And my daughter was just very much like, you know, content, but like not asleep, not napping, you know, not calling for me, but also I was just like very much on call. And I remember we had this little like, I think it's called a cajon or a cajon. It's like kind of this thing you sit on and like, it's like a drum thing that you sit on and like beat between your legs. I had like this little one. And I remember sitting in the living room with like unplugged guitars and Eli just like tapping on this thing through the, you know, kind of making beats for some of the ideas we were working on. And, you know, realizing, because there's the one part in the song where like everything drops out. And like in there, you can hear like a subtle track of that, you know, percussion instrument as like an underlying track under the blast beat. But again, it was like a blast beat with no kick. So it's just this like weird blast beat. And like, you know, and a lot of the, you know, that song was just kind of like, let's make like, kind of like the set opener, you know, like what would be the song that we would play first in a set? What would be like the, if not, you know, Presage, the way the album opens, what would be like the other opener? Because I don't know if we have one. You know, what would be the other, like, come out of the gates, or like we need to bring the energy back up after a song like Memory Palace or something. We need to like kind of have this just like turbo song that like after an album of like increasingly longer, more progressive songs, how can we just kind of wrap this up, like put a nice bow on it? So that song was just kind of like keep it high energy, high tempo, wacky, you know, chromatic stuff. But then at the end where it kind of drops to that like different dynamics, it was like, okay, how can we also play with this other thing that we were very conscious of during the writing of the album, which was like this contrast where like when the drums were blasting, guitar and bass was going slow. And when guitar and bass was going fast, drums were more like stable and steady, you know. And that was kind of a thing on like Memory Palace. Again, like there's that like really big, like, you know, where it really kind of climaxes. The drums are blasting and the guitars are just like, just like holding these long things, and like really realizing in the writing of that song specifically how much we really liked that, like that push pull contrast thing. I keep saying it. So Memory Palace was just like how can we summarize everything that we've learned? How can we like deliver all the John Frum, you know, signatures in one, you know, quick song that is short enough to be a video or a single. You know, also maybe there was a little bit of that cognizance too, of just like, if we expect to get any airplay, whether it's videos or like, you know, metal, you know, metal radio or anything like that, like it wouldn't hurt to have a song that's like under 4 minutes, you know, and, you know, so there may have been a little bit, you know, I'm sure that we were a little aware of that kind of stuff. But I mean, I guess
like
that's
the genre or anything having, you know, a timing as far as something not being 12 minutes long, you know, or a station having to go in and cut a certain section to it. You know, I mean, that's a good thought
I mean,
too.
We kind of always settled into like a mid-tempo thing. Like some of the stuff is blistering, but like I kind of always, you know, kept trying to keep things in like a groove mindset. Like even if it's heavy, I want there to be like a head nod, if not a head bang. You know, I think a lot of music, a lot of technical music especially, is like, it's a lot of like ego driven, let me blur you out with this shit. And it's not very like, there's really nothing to lock into. There's nothing to really like, not nothing, but like, I just kind of always wanted to make sure that that was like an element to it. And like, you know, maintaining this like mean street Philly vibe. But like also having, you know, this kind of deep, you know, rhythmic undercurrent. I don't know.
I mean, you know, as far as mentioning blistering, you know, myself being a drummer and listening to old Eli's parts, I'll say that's just some blistering stuff.
He's a beast, you know, and like, you know, a lot of, you know, pretty much all the drum solos and guitar solos on there, like, you know, maybe a pinch of comping, but like so much of that stuff was all improv. And like any of the live stuff we did, it was also like a thing where it was like, I don't want these solos to be the same every time.
Uh,
You know, like when you solo on this album, that's the last time it's going to be like that. And every time I have videos, it's going to be different. Um,
oh shit!
you
Wow.
know,
Okay, that's
and
cool.
so like that's, definitely like, He Come and like, oh man, Memory Palace. There's one other song that again, I'm just kind of blanking on the names because I've just been out of practice with them.
It's
But
been
just
a
like, we would try
yeah.
to insert these moments of improv, and because like, we were into, jazzy fusiony stuff. Um,
Hmm.
so we wanted to make sure that that element is there live, and that like, again, if we fall on our face, we fall on our face. But it just makes it so that like, if people come see us 3 nights in a row, they're not going to see the same show.
Same
There's going to be
show.
some
Yeah.
different
Okay.
element to it. And that was something that we really felt like metal needed a little bit more of that, especially death metal needed a little bit of that,
Hmm.
like openness and not so rigid, not so scripted, not so like, dependable or safe. Um,
Yeah.
and for what it's worth, I may as well take the opportunity to plug, like, we're very active still and about to become more active. Like even in the next 2 weeks, like we're all finally going to be in the same place and we're going to be able to write some new stuff. There's like a lot, some different
Sweet.
changes, some new fresh stuff going on, but like we have at least like half an album of demoed structures, like skeletons of stuff that is like, more than just like a riff that just is
Oh
kind of like,
man.
okay, let's flesh it out now that we have the time, now that we've sat on this stuff and it's like all the nonsense has been boiled away. Let's kind of go back to it, have that final editing and fully flesh this thing out, and hopefully be able to release, I don't want to put a timeline on anything because that's, that's still, we need to make a deadline for ourselves, but I'm certainly not going to make it public because that's just asking for
Yeah.
us to not meet expectations. But,
Yeah. Totally.
I think because there's kind of been a lot of like radio silence, and
Hmm.
pandemic is definitely not helping anybody, but that project
Right.
is definitely very much like alive and in the in the tool shed, just kind of like tinkering away. So
Yeah. Yeah.
if
Okay.
you're into it, stay
Nice.
tuned.
I love
Yeah,
that.
cool.
Hell yeah, that's what. One other thing I wanted to mention too, as far as because you mentioned as far as the live show and being a little bit different, that adds a different energy too to playing as well. When you're going up and you're playing something different, time after time, it kind of gives you a little bit of like a, all right, here we go, here comes this part. I got to kind of put in my mind what I'm going to play over this. It kind of makes it interesting playing too. Night after
Yeah,
night with touring and such. So I like that. That's cool.
yeah,
A
it
little
was fun.
behind the scenes note there.
Yeah.
As far as Azusa, I wanted to ask, with kind of the vast ends that you've traveled musically in different bands, what has been something with Azusa that is kind of in a sense excited you or continued your inspiration to continue writing and playing music?
I would say there's two main things there. One is, once again, I got to join, although that band kind of started from scratch, and I consider myself like, from the beginning, I'm pretty much in there because some of the stuff had been written. I mean, some of it decades ago. When like the Extol
Mm-hmm.
Synergy record was out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but the one, it was again getting to kind of play with some people that I really respected. I was a big fan of Extol. Again, I just kind of keep getting to join either my favorite bands or like bands with people that I really respect, whether it was Dillinger
Yeah.
or, I played with this band Starkweather for a little while and they were a big influence on me. I got, and so anyway, I mean, I could go into it more and more, but that was a big thing for them. But one of the things that I really enjoy about Extol is just, and this can get poo-pooed all day, but just their kind of like spiritual attitude where
Okay.
it wasn't just like we were making music for music's sake.
Mm-hmm.
In some sense, like they really, and we really like imbue those songs with like some other energy, like it wasn't just like, yeah, I don't know. I don't really even know how to explain it other than just like, and in varying states of belief and you know, those guys are just like, you know, and Elaney too, like, it's just part of the dialogue at all times that like
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of, you know, talking about some bigger picture, you know, and kind of it's like, it's not necessarily about like my relationship with this girl who broke my heart, or my relationship, like I hate my dad and my parents or my priests or something like that. It was very much like, you know, or, you know, fuck church or whatever. It was just like this different, you know, more of an adult struggle with these things. You know, and not that it's all about like faith or anything like that. It's not, but it's very much like
Right.
not childish. Like the things that we're talking about are not like things a teenager would write about. Like, again, it's like, it's not about like, you know, oh, this girl broke my heart, emo. It's like, you know, I'm having a really, really tough time with my like husband or wife, you know, or I'm having some really like dark nights of the soul here, or like, it's not just like, oh, you know, life sucks. It's like, no, now we're talking about like disease, death, you know, like all kinds of things that aren't just like weird concepts. It's like, no, this is some real shit.
Yeah. Wow.
Um, you know, that I really always try to shout out is just having it be like a female fronted thing.
Yeah. Right.
And like really enjoying, you know, the energy of having a, you know, not just like a male environment all the time, you know, that it's like, you know, whether it's in the van or just, you know, the discussions are different. The vibe is different. There's like a, you know, a brother sister thing, a maternal thing, you know, just all these different energies that actually get to be fully expressed on tape and outside, you know, just in our dialogue, in our communication, in our interactions. And I'm not saying it makes everything easier, you know, it doesn't necessarily, but like I'm in it and I enjoy it because there is this like, you know, growth factor and like just this kind of like deeper dialogue um, at all times. So, you know, and just a different energy, you know, definitely creatively, like, you know, I've kind of said before, like as a man, it moves me differently when a female is screaming in my ear. You know, it's just like, it's a little triggering in a different way when somebody is really like belting it out and bleeding for it, and like, you know, knowing how much emotion goes into Elaine's lyrics and knowing the experiences that she had that goes into this stuff. It's just like, whoa, this is like, this is heavy, man. This is, you know, like you know, certain moments in those albums, I'm just like, ooh, like I almost can't listen to it because it's just like, oh, it's just too, you know, it just hits in a personal way, or just in a like, it hits a part of my body that I'm just like not used to, you know,
Yeah.
or just that like, you know, or maybe I was uncomfortable going into, you know, and kind of knowing where she's coming from and being like, oh, well, then I gotta bring it, you know, or like, no, I hear her lyrics and I read it, or like, you know, or not to discount what David and Krista put into it too, just like knowing their personal lives and really like, you know, being much more adult. I think with Dillinger, there were these, you know, there were definitely kind of hurdles because like we had met each other in like at least for me, my early 20s, and, you know, Ben and Chris and everybody else kind of more mid 20s. But either way, like we met and we forged our impressions of each other in like our early 20s. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and now knowing them as like 40-year-olds, it's like, it sucks sometimes to feel like I'm still getting over some of the negative impressions I had of your like younger, immature self. And not to say that some of that stuff didn't play out all
Oh
the way
yeah.
up to present,
Okay.
but like it was
Yeah.
sometimes hard to allow yourself to like let this person have a new impression, you know, or give this person a second chance in some ways, whether it was just personal or creatively, you know. And it's kind of been great to get out of a band and to take some of those shackles off and be able to be like, I'm just your friend, you know, if you
Yeah.
want me to
Yeah.
be. You know, we don't have an agenda. We don't have a show booked. We don't have any plans on reuniting. There's, you know, the conversations about that are really more like, it's funny how people want us to, you know, like, isn't that cute?
Yeah.
And how like, I don't feel like that's like, that's just not where I'm at, you know. And I'm not saying that that day won't ever come, but like, I'm certainly not holding my breath and looking at my watch. And
Yeah. Sure.
it's flattering that I know other people are, but it's just kind of like, you know, like keep waiting because, you know, I've got other shit to work out right now. It took me 18 years to like get those wounds. Now I might take me 20 to lick them all clean.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
Yeah.
so with Azusa, it was just like I could meet these people at like in my late 30s when I'm just in a slightly different phase of my life. And it was
Sure.
easier to kind of forge friendships and build relationships from a more, I don't know, I don't want to say adult or mature, but just from a different, you know, phase in my life.
Yeah. Okay. I think, I mean, as far as like the discussion or somebody bringing up, like reunions or different things, that's all like all fun. But I think one of the things that I've appreciated so much from seeing the band expanding out and doing other things is as far as like the project, like yourself, being
Yeah.
involved in something like Azusa, doing John Frum and hearing those things and being like, holy fuck, like that wasn't the end. Like Dillinger is cool,
Yeah.
but I would have never heard, I would have never possibly found these other bands or, like Extol. I wasn't familiar
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
until I see, I see the other bands kind of forming, and then I'm like looking like, okay, now I can go and check here. And so I think that's a satisfying thing too, as far as maybe fans wanting that. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
you go and check out some of the newer stuff and it's like, man, it's good shit. Really, really good
Yeah.
stuff. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm honored and
it's
blessed and
cool to see
grateful to like,
a further journey.
sure. And like kind of, to go back into that question a little bit, just like being able to get under the hood of like bands that I liked, like, working with Extol and being like, okay, well, Krista and David write songs like this, and I can hear the Extol thing and seeing how they do it and seeing like, I mean, just David is just like a force, man. That guy's a fountainhead. That guy can sing. He plays good. I mean, he writes so much of this stuff.
Yeah.
And he's just full of ideas. Like, I'm just like, I actually don't know what to do here. And he's like, well, what about da, 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 and he sings, he grabs the bass, he'll kind of like start to kind of hunt and peck it out. And I'm just like, whoa. Like, and I know it wasn't like he had this preconceived thing. It was just very much like, how about this? It's as if he just like
Yeah.
casts his butterfly net into the new sphere and grabs these fantastic ideas, and then we go back and forth on it. And I'm like, oh, okay, like this. And then I play and he's like, oh, that's really cool. Oh, did you hear what you did there? Okay. And then next thing you know, we're just like out of the gates with something that just was like, and then we're kind of track it and go back and listen to it when it's over. And it's just like, you almost don't even remember coming up with it. You're just like, whoa, dude, it was so cool when we just like surrendered to it and didn't try to like heavy hand it. And it just happens. So just kind of really, being in the studio. I mean, I love being in the studio with David. It's like one of my favorite things in the world. And one of the things that this pandemic has really like nuked me on is just like, oh man, I really miss you. And I really miss working with you. Like when we talk on WhatsApp or something, just like, man, when is this going to open back up so we can just like get back to doing what we love?
Right.
We can keep talking. I'm just going to warn you that even if I charge my battery completely, I'm getting down into the yellow here.
Wean moments.
So
yeah. Okay.
I don't want to just cut you off. If I get cut off, I apologize. And I had a great time talking to you. But that said, we can keep riffing for a minute.
Let me slap you really quick with this finale here.
Okay.
And we'll end things off. Like I say, first and foremost, I appreciated your time today. This has been absolutely awesome and really appreciative. I've
Thanks.
Loved your stuff, and I think it's something too. For someone who hasn't checked out the newer stuff, that although I love Dillinger, is one of my favorite heavier bands of all time. I really appreciate some of the stuff that's coming out and, the things that you and other members have been doing, and commencing forth.
And
so,
I mean, Dillinger's just
right
been a
on.
great aircraft carrier to fly off of. Like none of this stuff would have happened without it, So
yeah. Sweet. All right. Let me ask you here. Yeah. let me ask you for this finale here. So let's even say with John Frum, something extreme, something, really, really heavy, fast. Are you familiar with the movie Judgment Night? Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I know the
90s
movie. Yeah, admittedly, it's funny. Like when you wrote me and you're like, "You want to talk on a horror?" I'm like, "Yeah, for sure," because I'm a talker and I should probably just shut up more. But beyond that, I'm horrible with like actors and movies. It's like I could tell you who played on this weird 7-inch, but like when it comes to movies and actors, like my brain is like a sieve.
Yeah.
And
okay.
So I have a feeling that I've seen this movie. I'm not fresh and familiar with it. I can't imagine not seeing the movie because I feel like, especially with the soundtrack and everything else, like definitely heard the soundtrack.
That's what we're going to touch on, actually,
Okay.
not the movie. So the soundtrack,
Okay.
that was what
Yeah.
was so huge. I feel like that was like, kind of the thing that everybody, gravitated toward was the heavy mixed with somebody outside of a genre. Let's say a band
Sure.
like John Frum. If you guys had the opportunity to work with an artist outside of metal,
Mm.
who would you have for one song?
Oh man. Oh, I mean, I keep thinking about like, so I'll there's a couple different answers here. Different people I would love to collaborate with, period. There's a beautiful harpist from Philadelphia, or, who's living in LA right now. Her name's Mary Lattimore.
Oh, okay.
Great friend, great human being, super talented. I really would love to get her on an album, especially on a
Wow.
John Frum album. Like, I think that would be like a really cool element. We talked about it before, timing and different things like didn't quite line up. But she would be like a first draft pick for sure. Um,
Love that.
Something like, I don't know if you've heard the band FERPA.
I know
Uh,
who that is. Yeah, I
it's like
haven't
kind of
gone through
like
a couple
real
albums.
deep, ominous, like dark, like almost in the Sun category, something
Mm,
like that. They would be a rad thing to work with. This dude Josh in Telephone Tel Aviv, he was in the Black Queen for a minute too.
okay.
Like, I would love to have him like remix some John Frum stuff.
Nice.
Or
Yeah.
just give it this like other, kind of more heady. Um, I would just love to hear what he would do with it.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
so like a remix thing would definitely be cool. I'm really kind of lately been getting in more into like this, like kirtan or qawwali music, which is
Okay.
kind of just like spiritual, kind of devotional music.
Hmm.
There's this one artist who's, since passed, but some people might be familiar with Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Like
Okay.
Jeff Buckley loved him, I mean, Eddie Vedder loved, I mean, he's like considered one of the 4 greatest singers of all time. I would highly recommend, especially going to YouTube and like checking out Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan and just like qawwali music in general. But like anything kind of from that, world, anything that's just kind of like more devotional, more like, again, just kind of from the heart. I think a lot of
Sure.
metal just comes from the mind or the ego or just kind of from the hands. It's
Hmm.
like, watch me shred, and like I practiced a lot and like I don't care if you're the best at practicing. I really don't. Like, and not to say that there aren't amazing musicians who practiced a lot and really communicated,
Hmm.
but like, I would take a Jimi Hendrix over like, so many other shredders today, over maybe
Sure.
like I don't even want to say because I love so many of them, but like,
Hmm.
or like a Sean Lane, like that dude kind of like, he put out some
Nice.
really cool, like kind of more like spiritual stuff. Um, so I think if anything, like just kind of having more instruments with overtones, maybe more female vocals or choir stuff, more like human stuff,
Sure.
more percussion, more like, I don't want to say like world music as if I'm like appropriating everything, but just kind of um more acoustic, more like, I don't know, like even like Han drums, any kind of thing that just kind of invokes a different, like more mystical state, you know?
I love that. That's sick.
Yeah, I don't know, just something a little bit more like, not just like it's like you can watch a horror movie all day and that's like trying to scare you, but
Hmm.
like getting chased by a tiger feels different, And like, so it's kind of like, I don't want to like kind of make some like artificially scary thing. I
Sure.
want it to
Okay.
genuinely like bring you into a different space where you're just like, and I'm not saying I'm going to accomplish it, but,
Hmm.
just kind of some of that more mystical vibe that like a Mahavishnu orchestra was able to achieve, or even like sometimes like Led Zeppelin on a song like Kashmir, just like, damn, like, I don't know
Yeah.
if you can hear that
Totally.
song and not really kind of just be like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
this is some shit, you know what I mean? There's like some
Yeah.
strings and like this tempo and these lyrics and I don't know, like it moves me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just kind of
Even.
want to maintain that, like, I want you to feel it. I want it to feel like something. And John Frum, another practice of John Frum was definitely like, not like necessarily to write something that sounded like some humming it out kind of thing, but just kind of like, you know, again, like you're being chased by a tiger. Play what that sounds like. Or like, yes, like that, but more like, you know, I don't know. We would just kind of have some like evocative, descriptive element of like what it should feel like, or what it would feel like to you, or what I want you to like kind of close your eyes and have this remind you of, you know? So not making music so like, well, I don't know, you interpret it how you want it to feel, you know? Like, I mean, of
Right.
course there's a little bit of that, but like, I kind of feel like that's an easy cop out.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
like, no, I genuinely want it to feel like this,
Yeah.
you know?
Okay.
And not to
Yeah.
say that's how it's gonna feel, but just like, just to know that it's like, I care about how it feels, not how it sounds. I don't want it to sound like music necessarily. I don't want it to like be like Mel Bay death metal, you know, song, you know, or
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
or kind of, you know, again, like Mel Bay punk book. It's like, it's not even punk if you have a book about it. It
Yeah.
like, it's just bullshit. So you know
Oh
what I'm saying?
shit! Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I love that. And then you mentioned the strings too, as far as it brings to mind, because I'm going to be having him on the show. Pete Kowalski, who was in Remembering Never, Bishop, all that shit.
Okay.
He has a band right now called Ether Coven, and that has
Okay.
strings in it. You know, mixed with his personality and his vocals and the heaviness of it. And there's strings, violins, and I'm just like, holy shit! Okay, like it adds a completely different juxtaposition that I'm not
Yeah.
used to hearing from that. And so, you know, you mentioned some of those things too, or maybe a more earthly,
Yeah.
approach, or, you know, or sound that comes along with it. I like that.
Yeah. Just
That's
not like
it's a
so
refreshing
like,
feeling for sure. Yeah.
yeah, not systematically metal, not like, you know, okay, well here, you know, and not also like, okay, we'll just add some keyboards, or like we'll just add some synth.
Yeah.
You know, like, yeah, there
Yeah.
might be some Moog on there somewhere, but like, yeah, I don't know. Like, there's like, you know, and even on the last John Frum record, there was like a little like detuned auto harp, and like, you know, at the beginning of Memory Palace, there's some like weirder, you know, just kind of like, well, I don't know, I got this thing laying around, it's totally out of tune. It's like, great, okay,
Oh, nice.
don't
Okay.
tune
I
it.
didn't know that shit.
Um,
Wow.
you know, yeah, and it's just kind of subtle, but like, and I don't necessarily care if you hear it, you know, and I also don't even like, I am probably shooting myself in the foot for even saying it. It's kind of just like, I just kind of want it to feel like, if you like the record and you think it's a little different than other things you hear, then mission accomplished. I don't need to say
Yeah.
anything else.
Totally.
Um,
Totally. I love that.
but anyway,
Sweet. Look, man,
cool.
I'm gonna let you go before
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
taking
I'm
more
getting the
than the
below
hour that I
10%
asked. And
warning now. So
yeah, dude. Once again, honestly, thank you
yeah,
so much. I
thank
really
you.
appreciate
Good
it. And
conversation.
you as
Happy to
well,
see
man. You
some of
as well.
these friends and these comments on
Familiar
here.
faces.
So
Yeah.
much appreciated for everybody who's listening to me just kind of, you know, babble.
Yeah. This will be
Love
it'll
y'all.
be
Miss
edited
y'all.
on YouTube, and I'll have it
Cool.
on here in like within the next week or so. So yeah, thank
Right
you
on.
very
I'll
much,
promote it.
man. Stay
All right.
healthy and stay safe.
Yeah, man. Have a good one.
Bye
See
bye.
ya.
He's a lo-fi horror guy. Yeah, he's kind of a guy, but he is so lo-fi, lo-fi a horror guy. Yeah. Lo-fi horror guy has been recorded in front of a live studio audience.